Problem.
All right, so good evening and thank you for joining me on Off the Court. Once again, the name is Wenson Mavor, and we discuss nothing but basketball. And when I talk about basketball, I mean progressive conversations that are specifically intended to develop the game of basketball both locally and international. Remember, this is your platform where we get to exchange ideas with one goal, which is to develop the game of basketball in the country. This evening, I'm privileged to be joined by the powerhouses when we talk about Zambian basketball. Yes, I'm talking about the leadership that are steering currently the ship called Zambia Basketball Federation, whose sole responsibility and task is to take us to the promised land where the game of basketball is concerned. And this is no other than the General Secretary, Mr. Rodrick Ndhlovu, who is with me this evening. Good evening, GS.
Good evening, Weston, and thank you very much for inviting us to this lovely show. And good evening, everyone who is following.
All right. Good evening, everybody, once again. And the treasurer for the Zambia Basketball Federation, Mr. Mulemwa Balamani, will be joining us later on the show to be able to just discuss and continue from where we left off last week. And this evening, we will be discussing the recently, just doing some review and, of course, discussing other progressive things within the world of basketball. As you may be aware, that recently the annual general meeting for the Zambia Basketball Federation was held and different stakeholders participated, and there was quite a number of things that were discussed and highlighted from that meeting. And I know that some of you may not have had the opportunity to attend, but thank God for this platform and the availability of the leadership from the Zambia Basketball Federation. We are talking about Mr. Rodrick Ndhlovu, who is ever available when we need him to come and guide us and help us to clarify a few things with regards to the game of basketball, but most importantly, also just to update us. So remember, as per tradition, you are at liberty to contribute constructively on the show as we get to converse, because this conversation is not only between me and the GS, but you are also allowed to participate. So, GS, just to start the conversation, I know that the AGM, according to the information that I have, was a success, and we just want to just first of all just get to hear from you. We know that quite a lot of people attended, and so how do you describe the AGM? Was it a success according to you? What are some of the key highlights that people that did not have a chance to attend maybe would like to know and expect?
Yeah, thanks, Weston, and yeah, it's an opportunity for us to reach out to the masses, the basketball followers, affiliates, and also fans. Yeah, so our AGM was very successful. As you may be aware, it's a constitutional requirement that we hold an AGM before the 31st of March. And we thank God that for the first time in a very long time, we had our AGM very early. And you could be wondering, others were asking why we had it early. We want to align ourselves with our calendar. For many seasons that have passed, we have always lagged behind in terms of holding the AGM. We have had even issues of going against the constitution to hold the AGM in July, in April, and stuff like that. And this was attributed to both logistics issues and also the leagues not ending on time. But we have to pat ourselves on the back that this time we remained within the constitutional provisions to hold our AGM before the 31st of March to give ample time for not only the associations to get ready for their seasons, but also to give the federation and the associations working together to do quite a few things that needs to be done before the start of the season. We're talking about referees clinics, we're talking about coaches forums, and also for the associations to have their own AGMs So it came to light in the AGM that we agreed as a council that all the associations that are affiliated to Zambia Basketball Federation should have their AGM on or before the 28th of February, which is this month, and that will pave way for their successful opening of the leagues. And this will be determined by particular associations. So yes, it was a very successful AGM. As you may be aware that the format has changed, and let me take this opportunity to just highlight a few things concerning the people or what constitutes the council at the Zambia Basketball Federation AGM. You may be aware that we have moved away from the association setup where we only had the 2 associations in the country, and this now meant that the AGM was including all the affiliates, and by then it was the clubs. But that format has changed with the transition into the federation. So the federation's members of the council includes, among many others, the associations, which are a key part of the council. So unlike a situation where clubs attend, in this case, the associations attend, and we accept, or it's highlighted in the constitution, that 2 members of the association should attend. Traditionally, it's the chairperson and the general secretary. In case they don't make it, they send their representatives through a written consent and also written notification to the secretariat. Apart from that, we have members of the Coaches Association, members of the Referees Association, representation from the Players Union, and also members of the National Executive Committee. Besides that, we also have members of our newly introduced council members, or who we call the advisors to the federation. So that's the setup of the council, and also not forgetting a member of the government, which normally comes from National Sports Council. So this I needed to mention so that the mix-up that the fans, the affiliates, and also the basketball lovers should know. So it's not an exclusive club, but this is a constitutional issue, and that's what constitutes the council. Thank you.
Sorry, let me just mute my microphone. Yeah. So I love the fact that you mentioned that it's not an exclusive meeting, but inclusive participation is the goal of the council that participates in the AGM. However, I think where the mix-up comes from is the fact that the larger basketball constituents, that the representatives which constitute the council, are supposed to speak for. I think there's a gap. There somehow seems to be an information gap, and this is what is creating an assumption that this is an exclusive club. So I wanted to find out from you, are you also looking at the effectiveness of the council with regards communicating, for example, what is agreed or what is discussed at the AGM? Do these council people go back to the people, their constituencies, and tell them this is what was discussed? Or even before they attend the AGM, do they also, first of all, adequately consult with their people and come and be able to present to ZBF office bearers and say, this is what the people are saying? Because what happens is, after a successful AGM, people will still have questions. And then now you're wondering, why are people seem to be in the dark, yet their chairpersons, their secretaries, their GSs were present? Okay, so we seem to have a little bit of... Okay, so are you able to hear me, GS?
I can now. I can get you clearly. You had gone offline.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, as I stated, yeah. So look, uh, Zambia Basketball Federation operates just like any other organization, which has the rules and regulations and also guidelines. And we are within our guidelines and constitutional mandate to do the things that we do. And mind you, the constitution that we have is not that it was made by ourselves. When I mean ourselves, it's not the NEC members that made that constitution, but the basketball fraternity were all consulted and they all had their input in it. So it's upon each and every individual that wants to have no information gap, to have a culture of accessing these documents that govern our game, so that they are well informed and they also are aligned in what we are doing. So if you look at the council, it was if you look at the constitution, it was systematically and deliberate in its craft, because among the major key stakeholders or members of the council of the Zambia Basketball Federation annual general meeting or assembly, which is the biggest organ of Zambia basketball, are the associations. And we know for a fact that if they are part of the council, it means they are the ones that articulate issues, because they are the ones that own the funds, they are the ones that own the clubs, they are the ones that owns the players. So when they come to the council, we are sure that they are speaking on behalf of their affiliates. And the issues that are affecting the affiliates, they bring them into the council. And during the council meeting, we deliberate and we agree together. And because they are part of the council, we know that that information that is agreed upon is disseminated back to their affiliates. And it's assumed that when they are coming for such meetings, they are coming with the issues that they need to raise before the council, for the council to look at, either to amend, change, or continue with the status quo. So that issue of information gap, it could exist, but it is not in any way attributed to the way Zambia Basketball Federation operates. It's upon each and every one of us to effectively work and disseminate that information. So we assume that the associations disseminate that information. And as you said, if there are issues that come up in the council for the associations to look at, it's deliberate that our AGM comes first and theirs, it can come later. We are assuming that all those issues that were raised in the council will be communicated to their affiliates during their AGM, which are coming up in various associations. So if affiliates have got concerns, they will raise them, and there's a channel of communication. Those things which needs our attention will come to us, and those things that need the attention from us as the federation or the council, they'll come to the affiliates and they'll deliberate and make decisions. For example, it was the desire of the Zambia National Federation National Executive Committee to pass some laws that include league and competition rules. There was also a policy that we want to pass to protect and enhance the health of the players, the medical policy. It did not pass because we had concerns from the association that those documents or that information had not reached their affiliates, and we deferred it to them to look at them with their affiliates. And when they are fully satisfied with what we submitted, with or without amendments, they will come back to us and will act accordingly. So I reiterate, let people not work on assumptions and be speculative and just smear the federation with mud when it's actually falsehood that they are spreading or assumption. Documents are there. We've got a strategic plan. They can look at it.
But
We have,
GS, let me
yes.
let me borrow words from you. When you say people shouldn't work on assumption, but rather on facts, you yourself a minute ago just said you assume that the affiliates communicate effectively. Isn't that an assumption as well on your part? Because the reason why there is room for speculation is because the affiliates themselves perhaps are not doing a good job communicating some of the critical decisions that are made in a very strategic meeting such as the AGM. So why should you also assume that they're communicating effectively at the expense of your leadership reputation? Shouldn't you stand up and say, guys, we discuss these things, we communicate with you properly, we give you adequate information, we expect this information to trickle down? Because for me, it defeats the whole purpose of having a council of people that can't really serve the purpose that they're intended to serve.
Yeah, you're right, Watson. I used the word assumption, but that was just a backdrop to what I'd said. I said the Constitution, the procedures are well articulated, and we believe that that is being followed by each key player in the running of the federation or the running of basketball. Assumption word was used because of what you seemingly put in front of me, saying that affiliates are not getting that information. I cannot confirm on behalf of associations that they are not communicating that information. But you, as a reporter or as a media person, you get that sense, or you get feedback from fans, affiliates, and so forth, that they don't get that information. That's where the word assumption was used. However, you should note that this was one of the issues we tackled in the council when it comes to information flow and communication. It has been noted that communication hasn't been effective, but also this is not strange, because if you look at our strategic plan, this is one of our key strategic objective to improve the information. So it's work in progress, and we believe that the associations are also working on it to make sure that whatever comes from the federation and to the affiliates and also the fans trickles down to them, because they are our operating arm of our activities in basketball.
Okay, brilliant there, General Secretary. Now, before we get into some of the stuff that I saw in your report, let us discuss something that is very current and trending at the moment. The 3-on-3 national team that was supposed to travel to Ghana, but unfortunately communication came from the delegation leader that they will not be able to make it due to budgetary constraints. Now, I had an opportunity to interact with the Zambian delegation leader, Madam Mebo Nedziwe, and one of the things that she mentioned is that it was categorically stated from the beginning that priority will be given to teams that are qualifying for the Olympics and not these other teams that are going to participate. Now, when I interacted with the coaches, the team, the players, and everything, again, to borrow your words, the feedback that I was getting is that there was no proper communication with regards people knowing that there's a possibility they may not travel because priority will be given to teams that are going to participate, and also their participation will serve as qualifiers for the Paris Olympics. And I'm told there was a meeting where these crucial decisions were being made, and unfortunately the federation was not there. So I wanted to find out, why were we not invited to this meeting? I know we can't force our way, but I mean, I remember very well on this platform, you mentioned that you have a very good relationship with people at the Ministry of Sports. So how did this meeting miss your radar? Or perhaps, why didn't you extend or use your relationship to influence certain things to at least allow our team to be slotted in among those that were given a chance to also go and participate?
Yeah, you've raised quite a few issues, and I should be able to answer all of them. To begin with, we don't leverage on a personal relationship with the ministry, but we leverage the relationship we have the ministry because we are a fully paid up member of the National Sports Council and in the Ministry of Sports. So by virtue of that, we are entitled to whatever the ministry or through National Sports Council offers each and every federation and also the association. So we are in good standing with the ministry and we have a healthy relationship with them. Now, there are a few things that I need to dispel immediately. I do not know where that information you got that we missed a meeting or we are not invited. That's an assumption. And I should dispel it with the merit that it has. We have always, from inception, attended all these All African Game meetings, and there was no fora at any of those meetings where federations or associations were subjected to some interviews to justify why they should go for the games or why they should not go. So that assumption should go to bed. It has never been there. All the meetings that were called, basketball was present, and we participated within what we were guided to participate. And the other issue which I need to remind you, Watson, and the affiliates and fans out there is that we need to understand these competitions very well. All African Games, National Olympics, Youth and Senior, the African Union Sports Council events, they are events that are owned and operated or governed by the Ministry of Sports through National Sports Council. We are part of that by virtue of being an affiliate. We do not control who goes where and who does what. They are fully owned and controlled by the ministry through the committee that they constitute. So it's not at our call that we go to a certain competition or we do not go. It's them, they are the owners of the games, and they decide who should go for those games. From inception, through FIBA and through the organization of the All African Games, it was communicated to us effectively that basketball is going to participate in All African Games from the traditional 5-on-5 to 3-on-3. And it was well communicated to us, and this information went to all the affiliates that basketball participation at All African Games is a non-Olympic qualifier competition. We were just going to go there, compete, and win medals or just come back. We are not qualifying for any competition. All African Games is used by governments for certain sports codes to qualify as a pre-qualifier or as a qualifier to this year's Olympics in Paris. So from inception, we knew that we were a non-Olympic qualifier participant at All African Games, and this message was clear. Now, the ministry from inception through the meetings that we have attended from the time they started up to now, they had the desire to take 25 sports codes, 25 federations to All African Games, because it's also in their best interest that the more athletes they take, the more chances they'll have to mint medals for the country. And they submitted the budget, obviously, to Minister of Finance. At some stage, they trimmed that number from 25 to 15. And basketball was still involved and was still selected among the 15 out of the 25. They dropped 10 sports codes. And At the time they came to 15 participants to go for all African Games, which translated to about 125 athletes. We had a meeting with the Minister of Sports through their committee for all African Games, including the chef de mission or CDM, where they informed us to say, due to budget constraints, we needed to make a call. Instead of carrying both genders to the games, we are given a call to come up with one gender. And through our consultation and through what we thought the federation was well placed to not just go and participate, but compete and have a chance to meet medals, we resolved to send the males team. And the minister was happy. That shortlist was publicized by the ministry to say basketball is carrying a men's team, and our slots were given. They had another meeting, I think early this week or last week, where when the budget was finally approved by the Minister of Finance to what they were able to offer for the games, and that translated to 9 million kwacha. The ministry, after looking at that budget, they saw that it wasn't sufficient to carry all the 15 sports codes. And they had to sit. We were not part of that sitting as basketball or any federation. There was nothing, no meeting of that nature to decide who they should drop and who they should not drop. What has come out is that they looked at a number of factors. And what are those factors? One, they were prioritizing federations that are going to participate or compete to qualify for the Olympics. That was one of the criteria. The other criteria they were using was they looked at the last All African Games, and they looked at sports codes that competed and minted gold medals, such as gold medals and silver medals. And they prioritized those. And they couldn't exhaust other criteria because the numbers were slim and they had already reached their ceiling. This is what you saw this week, that they came up with the number that they came up, that they are going with the 60 athletes, and the basketball, unfortunately, we fell off. That's the fact about what has come from the ministry.
Okay, so thank you very much for that clarification and giving us that information. And Otema is joining us this evening. Good evening, Otema. But before I give Otema a chance to be able to come in, GS, I've got another question. Now, you rightly said we knew from the beginning that priority would obviously be given to sporting codes that whose participation rather would serve as qualification for the forthcoming Paris Olympics. Now, I wanted to know, don't you think we could have, say, gone to the private sector or put our heads together, form a committee of some sort of people that can try to raise funds and just do what we can to be able to raise our athletes, assuming we fell off, since it was indicated from the beginning. And currently we all know that Zambia is not in the best fiscal position where we would automatically assume that it's all rosy, will fly to Accra, Ghana. So why didn't we think about that? And whose responsibility was it supposed to be? Because I know that the 3-on-3 also, you know, for basketball, we were not just going to participate there. Our participation also has a bearing on our ranking on the map. And you know that ranking opens up certain opportunities for the country. So why didn't we look at things from that perspective from the onset?
Yeah, so correction, Watson, from the onset, I need to correct you. We did not know that we were not prioritized to go to Ghana for all African Games. We knew that we are part of that delegation. What we knew from the beginning is that we are that competition for us was a non-Olympic qualifier. That's a clarification I need to make. Okay? we knew that that was not a competition that will usher us into to qualifying for Paris. That's what I meant. Secondly, as I stated from my preamble, these are not our games. We are not deciders. We are not, they are government games. They are fully controlled by government. They choose who they take, and due to the financial constraints, as I said, the government, through the Ministry of Sports, wanted to take as many athletes as possible, but because of budgets, they couldn't. So there's no room for any individual federation to say, look, as you've left us, now we are going to mobilize funds and we want to go ourselves. No, there's a lot that goes beyond this, behind the scenes. There's issues of accreditation, there's issues of confirmation with the African Games Local Organizing Committee and stuff like that. Besides that, it's not just taking the athletes there. There are a lot of costs that are associated in taking the athletes there. So to remain within what the owners of the game want, we fell short on that one, and we were not given, and no one is given leverage to say, look, sponsor yourself to go to the All African Games. So it's not the owners of the federation to solicit for sponsorship outside an event that is not ours.
Okay, I hear you when you say the event that is not ours, but does government prohibit? Because I'm also looking at us seizing the opportunity. If government does not prohibit GS for us to go out there and source for funds and have something on standby, assuming government does not have the required budget to cater for everybody, we can simply say, okay, I think we have enough to be able to take these people, to have them compete and participate. If government does not forbid GS, then why can't we start thinking in those lines?
No, Watson, it's not as easy as that. It's a matter of policy. Government operates with policy, and the policy is that they organize and take athletes. There's no room for any individual sports coach to take themselves there. That's a point you need to know. Just like us, as much as there's an entity that wants to do certain things, they cannot do it because it's not within their mandate to do certain things. So that's how things are. It's a matter of policy. Government operates with policy, and the policy on the games is that they organize and they prepare the team they want to take.
Okay. Okay, GS. I think you've done some justice on that. But for those that are watching, you are at liberty to be able to join this conversation by simply commenting and let us know what you think about some of the trends that are happening within the world of basketball. But most importantly, also just be able to let us know where you're watching from, and we'll be able to appreciate and be able to rope you in on this particular conversation. Now, GS, let me come to the report that was shared during the AGM, and or maybe before I do that, I can see Otema is here. Otema, you're welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, Watson. Good evening, Honorable GS.
Yeah, good evening, my predecessor. Good to see you, at least in a formal approach to things. I'm happy you're here.
Okay, so Otema, maybe just before I get to the report, just quickly try to give us some of your reflections, and perhaps if you have a question, maybe for the GS, I would like to give you this opportunity so that you can just ask him. And you know, today we're trying as much as we can to be within time so that we don't keep ourselves here longer than necessary.
Yes, the hours went on, I think, to almost midnight that other time. Okay, the GS has ably guided and provided some clarity on one or two issues. But of course, in any submission, there are questions that arise. For instance, one of the things that is quite clear is the transition from the association to the federation necessitated a structure change within basketball. And I think the focus was basically to have these provincial basketball associations as running on their own, and the Zbf executive is the one that then basically gives policy direction. Now, one of the things that is apparent is in the last AGM, how many provincial basketball association chairpersons and secretaries attended, representing those associations? And is there now a need for ZBF to look at the requirement for participation or being part of the when they themselves remove the requirement for PBAs to pay affiliation or pay to be recognized by the the ZBF? And has this an impact on the financial or the income that ZBF would potentially be getting? In short, what was the rationale?
That's well.
Okay, Jess, please, you're on, Jess. You can.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
I want to get the last question from Otema. What was the rationale for?
Yeah, what was the rationale for waiving the payment by PBAs to to affiliate to the federation, as it were?
Okay, thank you very much, my predecessor. I appreciate those questions. They are objective and they beg us to look at them and answer them. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for being part of this, and I want you to in fact, through this forum, because I've seen that I don't know whether you think the doors have been closed for you to approach me and advise me. So I'm
it's good that you're mentioning it.
Affiliates that as it were, I appoint you into my office as my owner is still alive. So please feel free to come and advise me on these issues.
Thank you.
Okay, so we seem to have a bit of a technical challenge there with the GS. Yes, obviously it's the issue of the network. But one thing I'm liking is the fact that his office is open for people like you, Otema. Okay, we have the GS. GS, are you able to hear us?
It is good that he has mentioned. It is good that he has mentioned that his office is open, because I will address him here in a public forum and tell him that from all the meetings that we have had with him in a social gathering, he's intimated these same sentiments. But actually, the policy of a number of the key ZBA, the president and the GS himself, is basically like talk, but there's no action. So if, for instance, he was saying that his office is open, I mean, he's the GS. How do I just walk into the office and I want to offer myself? The resources that I've always said, the basketball resources that are there, they are available. And I don't have to affiliate to Magic, Pacers, NAPSA, or Looters to be associated to the guys because they have those affiliations. You just have to recognize that this is a resource we have, and let's see if we can bring him on. It's the executive. It's their show. So if the GS is being disingenuous by suggesting that his doors are open, because he has met me on a number of forums, and publicly I'm telling him that that invitation has been long overdue with no actions whatsoever. I'm hearing the stories, but he's not. For instance, I can tell you a number of.
When you say no action, do you mean they failed to call you, or you failed to take an initiative to just approach them and be able to say, hey, you said I can come to you, we can talk, so I'm here, let's talk. Okay, so GS is back. Maybe Otema. Let me just hold you right there.
Yeah. So,
let's allow the GS to be able to come in. Yes, GS.
Respond.
Yes.
yeah. So I was appreciating my predecessor. I said,
Your network.
you've got you accordingly. You can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so I
yes,
said,
we can.
My predecessor, you are welcome. You constitutionally, you are still GS, and it will save basketball, right? And myself and the entire federation that you are part of us, because you cannot cease after holding that office as CEO. So I know that you have space in the media where you talk about a lot of things, but I'm offering you space to speak through my office. So I officially appoint you that you are my advisor, just like Kaona is, because you have vast knowledge in this office, and also people that are not privileged to know what this office is about and the hurdles and the failures. You are blessed with, and by now, having been out there for a long time, wisdom has grown. So I want to tap into your wisdom, desist from those WhatsApps. You just come direct to the federation. You just come direct to the federation. We confer and we implement what it needs to be implemented. Now, going back to business. Allow me to answer my predecessor. So, so I got issues. The PBAs, there was a question, how many PBAs attended that? As you know, they are just one arm of the council, and they are very crucial because those are the people that holds our game. We did have quite a number of them. Those that did not make it, such as the CBA, Copper Belt, and we had Ruapula, they joined us online, and I can simply say we formed a quorum. It was regrettable that
Okay, so again, we seem to have a bit of a technical issue with JS, but as usual, when he comes back, we will hand over the floor to him just to be able to clarify and answer some of the questions that Otema has raised. Cizi, I know that you're currently watching us right now. Please don't even ask if you can ask, just ask.
Yeah,
please
so
go ahead,
I was
JS.
saying, it's regrettable that some of them were not with us physically. As you can see, even now, this technology is not serving us well. When you're not in one place and technology.
Okay, so we
contributions and concept much more participation by everyone. And coming to the issue of affiliation, it's very crucial. Okay, Mr. Otema, it's very crucial that whichever club you belong to, you being a legal counsel, you know that you cannot be considered part of the club if you don't pay affiliation. So it's within the Basketball Federation constitution that these PBAs should affiliate. And unfortunately, at times, we compromise due to the inability for associations to get organized. I like the way you put it, that the whole purpose of decentralizing the game by taking it to association was to mandate the associations to run their own affairs. And when I say to run their own affairs, is to mobilize themselves, mobilize their resources, run their leagues, and have as much resources as they want and administer them in the best interest of the game. But we have had the teething effect, issues, and we believe that with time, all these things will be arrested, because what we've simply put up is these things that you started a long time, even when you are in office, in trying to make basketball better by reforms of the constitution, reforms of the structures. And this is exactly what we've done. We may not realize it, we may not have realized it or realized the results today, but we are hopeful that by tomorrow we'll be aligned to what we desire to achieve. So we gave them a waiver because we saw that it was necessary at the time, but in the council, the last council meeting, we resolved that there is no PBA this season or this year that is going to be recognized to be part of the federation if they do not affiliate. So that is what it is, Mr. Otema, as you rightly put it.
Okay, interesting submission over there, GS. And before I go back to Otema, let me just go back to some of the things that I picked from your report. And earlier on, you and I were engaging on the issue of, sponsorship, the federation thinking outside the box to source funds that we can use to be able to meet government halfway. Of course, you spoke to the policy demands from that front, and I heard you. But what I want to pick out is in your report, there's a mention that the Federation had meetings with NIIF, Zambia Army, Invest Trust, and NAPSA for partnership and sponsorship. So we would like to find out from this meeting, briefly, GS, what were some of the specific areas of focus, and how far has this sponsorship talk? When are we likely to see this sponsorship materialize?
Yeah, thanks. So that NIF, that's NIF, is an organization, a Norwegian organization that is partnered with a few federations in the country, notably judo, there was netball, volleyball, and among them the NOSPA, and this including Sports in Action. So when the chief executive visited Zambia, we solicited a meeting which we had with the NIF executive director, and because of the format that they have changed in the approach to their sponsorship, they are dealing with the National Olympics Committee and these NGOs like Sports in Action. So the core objective of that meeting was to understand from the basketball perspective on how we relate and work with these particular organizations that they sponsor. And also from our side, we made ourselves available that look, as much as you are change policy on who you are partnering with, we said as basketball we are variable because of the constituency that we command, and also the ability that we have to actually carry out the objective of your organization by partnering with you. And also if you look at the sponsorship part, so it was a positive meeting, and of course it was a policy issue as well, and they promised that they'll look at it and will confer again within this first quarter on what they could have resolved in regard to working with Basketball Direct instead of working with us the way they are working with us through these organizations such as National Olympics Committee and the Sports in Action. And when we did meet Zambia Army and NAPSA, first and foremost, we needed, in our strategic plan, there's an objective that we need to improve our relations with our stakeholders. And we recognize that even those that are self-sponsored teams, we do realize and appreciate the partnership that we have enjoyed with the sponsored teams. So it's a deliberate move by the federation to consolidate our relationship with all these sponsored teams, and also highlight to them on how best they can improve sponsorship towards their teams, but also consider partnering with the Zambia Basketball Federation in sponsorship, in direct sponsorship, such as maybe sponsoring the national championship or sponsoring the independence tournament and such and such activities. So the conversations are ongoing, and they were received with the excitement, and there is work that is being done to make sure that we realize and get 1 or 2 sponsors from there.
Okay, I mean, yes, I hear you, though I feel you haven't really, spoken to what exactly people should expect. We know it's progressive, we know it's constructive, we commend you for it. But when it comes to what exactly should we be able to expect from these conversations, for example, we approached Green Buffaloes asking them to sponsor the championships this year by giving us a 50,000. We await response from them. Like that, it's easier for me to be able to remember and say, oh, GS is doing this positive thing. GS, how far? And things like that. Otema, let me bring you on now. Is there anything that you can weigh in on and just ask the GS? And GS, I hope you're able to see what is on the screen at the moment. There's a message from Kandala there. So after Otema asks his question, maybe you can also answer what Kandala is trying to say here. From what I'm getting here is that you are not a man to be trusted. That's what Kandala is saying here. So Otema, over to you. Otema, just kindly unmute your microphone, please.
My apologies. I just want to appreciate the time the GS has given us on this platform, and I think this is truly interactive. We are moving in a different way when we communicate, and social media is one of the ways. There's absolutely no reason why the GS or any executive member should not be afraid to be before others in a social media arrangement. I don't know why the fear or the apprehension, because these are public officers. By virtue of holding those offices, they are supposed to interact with the public. We don't sit on a lofty chair up there. So, like the GS has rightly given a hand to say, come to me and be my advisor. He has intimated these same sentiments as far back as even in the Shawi Fawaz executive, and absolutely nothing has ever happened. But let me say this so that we are on the same page. The GS currently is Mr. Rodrick Ndhlovu. And because he knows me at a different level, we interacted when we are in the Kambi executive. If he calls me and says, you come and do this thing and help me and whatnot, I don't think that's the proper governance approach. The idea is to moot the idea before the board, the whole executive, to say, we have this resource, we have that resource. What do you say? Do you agree to this? Because what we have is persons who have been in basketball, basically staying and just feeding off basketball. So, for instance, in the office of the president, where Maziko is, or the GS where Mr. Ndhlovu is, any person who's attached to those offices must be vetted, mooted, and actually checked for historical issues. What if Mr. Ndhlovu is calling me and have criminal ties? How does it affect the association? So we need to start cleaning those types of arrangements, because there is the biggest challenge to basketball in Zambia is affiliation. Currently, what I've noticed is basketball is basically NASDAQ. If Magic is playing, if Heroes is out now. If Magic is playing, if Pacers is playing, it's Bulldogs or whatever it is. So you are just playing at NASDAQ. That's where basketball is left. Actually, in my view, the sport is not growing. So one of the things when we implemented these structure changes is to look at how would actually make sure that these structure changes have a meaningful effect on the development of basketball. And the meaningful effect will be accountability. We need to start making Mr. Ndhlovu accountable for a decision he makes when he calls Mr. Musuka, who was a former GS, to come into his office. Because even though most people claim that basketball is basically a service and there are no monetary the gains, there are the allowances. Why do you think when it's a government program, all those persons who are not even technical persons rush to be team managers or whatever it is that they're called? So I think my brother, he knows me quite well. I'm a very upfront person, and he is also upfront with me. So if we have to be upfront, let's start cleaning the house so that basketball can get to the level that it should be. My brother has held 2 terms. He's probably going to be one of the longest serving DFs in the history of basketball. So having served 2 different administrations, is more than capable to understand that there are a number of leadership questions and the conflict of interest issues. I know that this federation is looking at the issue of conflict of interest. Exactly, the GS calling me to go and advise him is an issue of conflict of interest. So this is what we need to start doing. And then when he calls us, I'm not the only one. There are much more persons. Between Mr. Ndhlovu and me, there were 2 other GSs. So what about them? You know what I'm saying? So we need to be able to look at the resources we have. Get a committee. I'm told there's a legal committee. He said something about an advisory committee. Who are the advisors? You cannot certainly appoint the same persons to be advisors who could have caused us a ban for 6 years. See, those, we have an institutional memory as basketball. So let us not forget where we are coming from. And when we then question some decisions to say, okay, you have carried this All Africa team who qualified and whatnot, and you then need to say, no, we made a decision to carry the boys team. First of all, it's at the background of what? You want to go and get medals? So what if the boys don't get medals? Who was ranked better on 3-on-3, the girls or the boys? Because the girls were ranked 9th, the boys were ranked 17th, and they actually couldn't qualify for the 3-on-3, according to some WhatsApp or Facebook. But obviously, the GS has clarified on a number of issues. So you note these points that I've raised, GS. We need to be transparent. Yes,
I know that you can go on and on, but we need to give the GS a chance to be able to weigh in on some of these things. So GS, as you weigh in, I also want you to just from there, I've put it on the screen. So Sis has also raised a few questions that I think are very, very important for you, just to see how best you can quickly weigh in on. We have just about 10 minutes before we wrap up. So over to you, GS.
Yeah, so thanks, Otema, much appreciated. And when I invite you to my office, it's common knowledge. I'm simply spreading my resource base. Of course, you should note that Zambia Basketball Federation, and part of the structures and policies is that we have structures that have been created for advisory. And yes, we have a criteria on who should be part of that advisory board. And all those concerns that you've raised on the institutional memory that you may have for people that could have harmed the basketball in one way or the other, those things are done. Okay. So when I say, Mr. Otema, you are welcome, I just mean that you are not the only one. Of course, Mwembe is there and whatsoever. So what am I simply saying? I'm saying I do not own basketball. Maziko does not own basketball. Nick does not own basketball. We own it together. But even as we are in leadership, if there's people out there that can offer meaningful contribution to the development of the game, they are all welcome. The doors are open. There are formal procedures on how we can all add value to the development of the game of basketball. That's all I'm saying. And I appreciate your openness, and you know I'm equally open. So let's all unite as fans, as affiliates, and ex-leaders. Let's all work and fight for the betterment of the game. Unlike focusing on negativity, it will not take us anywhere. I think that is my submission to what Mr. Otema has said. And I don't know what Sis is asking. Maybe Weston, you can simplify that for me, then I can tackle it.
So Sisi is simply saying, you being the GS and the CEO of basketball, one, what are you doing to get funds in basketball? I believe you spoke a little bit about this. So Sisi maybe would like you to just briefly emphasize with specifications, perhaps. Secondly, what are you doing to build capacity in PBAs? Then thirdly, are we going to give a breakdown of the 100,313 that the national championship expenses? Okay, so I believe this other one is the purview of Mr. Mulemwa, who is not here. But if you have the information, I believe you are at liberty to be able to share with us. Over to you, GS.
Yeah, sure. Sis, thank you very much. First and foremost, I should believe that whatever financial issues that were reported to the affiliates at the council meeting, and I think that publication or report on the finances is out, and I think the treasurer made it very clear on the breakdown on whatever income and expenses were done at the national championship. So you may familiarize yourself with that report from the finance man, but what we can assure you and everyone on this program is that each and every coin was accounted for as regards to whatever was realized and is spent at the national championship. As in capacity building, I believe Sis, you've been aware for some reasons, personal or otherwise, from the administration of basketball, but I believe you are part of the Midlands Basketball Association, and I don't mean to be personal, but I just want to put things in perspective. And you should be one of the people that should actually be telling the public and affiliates what capacity buildings we have done as a federation, because you are one of the recipients of such programs. But just to highlight a few things, like Mr. Otema said, the structure change of the federation was to state capacity building at the association level. So if you look at our structure, it's the same structure that has trickled down to associations, and the programs that come to us at the federation level, whether from government, NGOs, or our mother body FIBA, we implement them using the associations. For example,
Okay, so network again, unfortunately, interfering with the response from the GS. Yeah, you know. Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead, GS.
You've got a program called your rules, your world. It was implemented in your association, and this was implemented in other associations. We've got a medical program that was done in your association, and it has been done in many other associations. We've got 3-on-3, which I believe you are now at the helm of that of that program in your association. We've done activities on 3-on-3 through your association, and we have the people that have actually directly come from association in terms of capacity building. Senimbuzi is from Midlands. He was sent to Mali to attend that coaches thing in Mali. That is capacity building. We had a girl from Napsa Breeze. She went to Rwanda. Mary went to Rwanda. That's capacity building. So there are a number of capacity building programs that the Federation has instituted in the associations, and the Midlands, you are part of the beneficiaries of those programs. So we are working on a number of programs, and we are on course.
Okay, so GS, before I move on. There is something very interesting here from, again, Kandala, who says the federation at the moment has nothing to offer the country other than the national championships and qualifications for BAL. Okay, I know you've explained those other opportunities that obviously the federation is offering. But in the event, this is where I'm interested in the most. In the event that an independent grouping came up with a plan for the National League, offering, for argument's sake, 200 PIN as prize money, what would ZBF's response be if this was to be done apart from ZBF? Would you be open to this idea? If they extended, say, an olive branch to say, okay, would like to work with you on this, support us, would you be open to this?
Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate that Kandara is acknowledging some of the mandates of the Zambia Basketball Federation. National championship is mandatory because this is a FIBA requirement that at the end of each season we produce a champion that should to compete in FIBA tournaments such as the BAO, Afro-Basket, and also Afri-Chan and stuff like that. So we need to get things right. Like my predecessor said, Otema, a lot of implementation and activities of basketball are done by the association. The federation is policy formulation, policy direction, and also overall to see that the game of basketball develops. Okay, so apart from the national championships, there is room for the federation to deal with a lot of local competitions, such as we can dependent on who we get sponsorship from. We can put up a countable number of tournaments dependent on which sponsors we get. Okay, so this is what the federation offers. Okay, and we have been somewhat limited because we are still putting our house in order in getting sponsors, and we need to work together as a constituency, as basketball, to get those sponsors, and that's what we are working on. And if you look at our strategic plan, this is one of the key objectives in our strat. Coming to the last part of the submission from my brother Kandara, why should we stand in a way of people that are helping us develop the game? If you have sponsors or you are a sponsor yourself and you want to conduct a basketball activity in this country, you are welcome, as long as you remain within the provisions of the law, and the federation will facilitate. I'll give you an example. There's a tournament coming up for Helen, that foundation. They now turned into a yearly competition. We allow people space to conduct those tournaments. There's Munari Sans. We allow that. So if you are organized, we are open to anyone who has a heart to contribute to the affairs of developing basketball in Zambia, as long as the guidelines are clear. So you're welcome, Mr. Kandala. Let's talk about it. I'm actually excited that they will have so many tournaments, organized tournaments. Thank you.
Okay, so interesting submission there from GS. And Otema, I would like you to chip in as we get to conclude. And as Otema is chipping in, GS, at the back of your mind, sees he as a rider. He's still concerned that we were unable to break the 100,000 kwacha 313 expenditure that was highlighted in the report. Cici is still concerned about that. And he's also saying, right, you've talked about what you're doing in Midlands, but what about PBAs that are coming up, such as Western Province, that are hungry for basketball and would like to grow? What is in the pipeline for them? So Otema, chip in, and GS, you come in and be able to weigh in on that, and then we could call it a night.
I also, at the same time, when I appreciate my GS and the hard work that he's doing, I also note the challenges of being the SG for basketball. I mean, the GS for basketball, who has, the federation, has grown. But the two key points that I want to bring out is the development of basketball. Looking at the development plan that you developed and the strategic plan, I think there's been very little accountability on the 3-on-3, and this I say so because if you look at Madagascar and let's say, for instance, Botswana, which is quite close to us, one of the ways that basketball has started growing in those areas is on the 3-on-3. And the only requirement for 3-on-3 is to organize a court, have a 3-on-3 tournament. The more tournaments you hold, the higher your ranking goes up. So our girls were ranked higher than the boys, and the girls were about 9th. The boys were 17th. So imagine basketball 3-on-3 is an Olympic sport. So on the rider of what the GS said when the Ministry of Sports was trimming organizations, basketball could have easily qualified had it had more 3-on-3 games. So I think my issue when I'm looking at the structure of the ZBF now is to look at how the national technical coordinator's job and the 3-on-3 coordinator are coordinating. Because part of the challenges, GS, is that there are certain officers who subsume other offices which they are not supposed to. So to support you on the efforts of the federation, perhaps the key terms of reference when you are reforming the structure of ZBA have to be well defined. Because absolutely, and at no time should a treasurer be a national technical coordinator, or a national technical coordinator become a treasurer, because these are elective positions. They are elected to perform those functions. So when there is a blur, there is naturally going to be a governance issue. So as GS, you need to take this by the realm, by the horns, and face it. And also in your report, this should be reflected. It should be reflected. Even if these colleagues are colleagues in the executive, you must come out, because that is a basis for us to develop the sport. Secondly, it's also because we want to have... Yes.
Okay. Come in, Jess. Come in, Jess.
Can I respond to you quickly?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
come in, Jess.
Otema, thanks. You've stressed this issue of crisscrossing of personnel within the federation executive in performing other functions. And this was noted, not only now, but maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And this is the reason why the council in Kitwe passed that resolution of conflict of interest. And it's much appreciated, because it's not to despise anyone or to bar anyone to do activities in basketball, but we want to do them professionally, and also the issue of accountability and the legitimacy. So the council reiterated at the last year's assembly and this year's assembly that the conflict of interest has to be triggered. And we reiterated in the last council meeting that that will be effective this season. And my office with the legal counsel office, we are on it. And you'll see that the people that are conflicted, they will need to wear one hat instead of wearing 2 hats. So that is much appreciated. And just to put this to bed, yes, it's not Rodrick deciding, it's the council decided. And it's within my duties as the Secretary General of the Zambia Basketball Federation to spearhead the implementation of what the council resolved. So I put myself on the line, it shall be done. And the issue that you mentioned also on the terms of references, I think you have had a look at each office bearer's terms of references, which I think you should have been part in coining. They are very clear, and every one of us have them. So it's only in order that we stick to them. So thank you very much for that, and we shall work on it.
Okay. Okay. So, Otema, I know that you still have something, but GS, from me, the closing question, obviously, again, I'll still go back and refer to the report, GS. And
Please
one
do.
of the things that I would like to raise is one of the issues that keeps coming back is that, you know, the Federation owes monies to Afro Basketball Undertaking, uh, the Zimbabwe Undertaking. I think that is reflected. And then we wanted to find out, you know, is there a deliberate plan to pay this money that is owed? Is there a deliberate plan to pay this money that is owed? And secondly, you mentioned commendably so the empowerment initiatives that the Federation is deliberately facilitating, the opportunities you're creating. You referred to Mary, you know, Sen, and all these others that have gone for capacity building and exposure, all with one goal, that is to build Zambian basketball. But in the report, you mentioned something interesting. You say the Federation attended the NSCZ, NOCZ, NOWSPA meetings and workshops, which I believe are a form of capacity building, to answer Ciz's question, through representatives. Reports are yet to come from most of them. Now, for me, GS, then I ask myself, did you send these people to go and drink tea and just come back and pretend nothing happened? Or after sending these people, you expect them to be able to give you a report of what it is that they learned? And this report is not just, by the way, I attended the report, lunch was on time, we are okay, we enjoyed. No, but this is what I learned from this workshop. This is what we can do to improve basketball, including the coaches that you sent, people like Sen, people like David, people like Mary, people like everybody else. Do we have a system where these people can be able to teach what they've learned from where they went, for the sake of passing on the knowledge and ensuring that there's a trickle-down effect? GS.
Yeah, thanks. I lost you at some stage, but I've gotten the scope of your question. Yeah. So look, we are deliberate in attending these workshops or capacity building programs, and the goal is whoever we send to any of these are an ambassador to the Zambia Basketball Federation. The knowledge that they accumulate and assimilate in particular forums and the workshops and the camps, they are meant, when they come back, they are meant to be the focal point, or be, just an example, be trainers of trainers. So, for instance, if we send David Musonda to attend a 3-on-3 workshop in Tunisia, when he comes back, he submits a report to us, and we look at that report, and we now sit down and say, look, David, what you learned there, now take it and incorporate it in our game. Then he teaches the colleagues within the basketball fraternity, and we grow like that. Similarly to each and every one of us who go for various. So I can confirm that that's the strategy that Zambia Basketball Federation has. It's not that people just go there, drink coffee and come back. We make sure that we follow up on the reports, and we also make sure that what was learned is implemented. Because remember, even the people that invite us for those, including FIBA, they want these programs to be done on ground. Of course, we have members that may attend and never report back, but it's incumbent upon us as the leadership, through my office, to follow up on those people and make them accountable for what we sent them for.
Okay, so Otema, quickly, just your final thoughts and question, if you have any, for the GS.
My final thoughts are that let us focus on the 3-on-3 as a means to grow the sport, because I know that FIBA does give an amount of about $1,000 to $2,000. This is in the public domain now, And this is what's really growing basketball in many parts of the world. Of course, 3-on-3, you don't compete in the 5-on-5 at a higher level. And 5-on-5 can't compete on the 3-on-3. But it's another way to link this program, Mr. GS, with the PBAs. Because if they hosted a number of these tournaments across the country, you would see results. Especially that Mr. Mwembe Kaona reported, as the president said, that the president rewarded the two associations with the 10,000 as a grant for having attended the AGM. So when we say that a number of them attended, you mean 2 out of 10, and then maybe, I don't know, Wapula through whatever means they were doing. But quite frankly, let us look in the mirror. Let us introspect. Where are we at basketball? There's a number of good programs you have put across. We also have to look at the FIBA licensing. You can't have a 50-year-old person trying to get to a position for a FIBA licensee who's 25 to 35. That's what the FIBA requires here. So we need to start looking at the next person, so that when you are honoring those honorees with life membership, we shouldn't die before you start honoring some of the young people that are out there, Mr. GS. So the criteria, and we are always going to be available for you. The last point I want to raise to the GS is you are the chief executive. All communications and correspondences must go through you, no one else. You cannot second it to any other person. In the past, we have had problems with this issue. And lastly, Mr. GS, the work you have done is highly commendable for having made international obligations, having attended FIBA meetings, because I know through those interactions, there's going to be a lot of programs coming to basketball in Zambia, which maybe your federation, the associations are not aware of. So we could refine the process of disseminating this information to them, and potentially, please consider social media as a friend. We can never hate you to the point of not wanting to hear our GS speak to us. This is an earnest appeal, because basketball, obviously, that office you're holding is a thankless job. But the more you interact, the more you are challenged, the more you work harder. And that's my only advisory note, having you called me to your office. That's the first point of advice. Please interact more with your people in the basketball.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much,
GS.
Otema.
So
first and foremost,
the floor, GS, is open for you. Please respond and then close.
Yeah, thank you very much, Otema. You know, you do not have an idea how happy we are as a federation. On behalf of the federation, I'm happy that you are acknowledging some of the successes, and you commending us on a number of issues, such as being in touch and collaborating very well with FIBA and the government institutions and so forth. You are very right. Through these interactions, we have had the recognition, and through participation in a number of international engagements, Zambia ranks very highly with FIBA in terms of a friend they can rely on participation and possibly hosting of certain tournaments on behalf of FIBA. So the other issue, 3-on-3, believe it or not, from inception, I think before you even left office, even in Sharif Awad's office, 3-on-3, we targeted it as a #1 developmental target for Zambia. You'll see through 3-on-3, it's the first time that Zambia qualified for an African championship. So we are working hard on it, and there's still a lot of room for us to do a lot of activity on it, and we are not relenting. We'll make sure that that sector of our game is developed and much participation. This was reiterated in the AGM, and there was an appeal even from the head of 3-on-3 that PBS should give him some space to conduct his activities, because the more we play, as you rightly put it, the more ranking we get, the more qualification we get for tournaments. I should happily announce also, for those that have not heard the news, that we have progressed. Mr. Otema, my predecessor, and anyone that is listening right now, we may not have progressed to your desired level, or to my desired level, but it's work in progress. We are recognized as part of one of the best federations for FIBA Africa. Notably, you should be aware that Zambia was among the 5 federations within Africa that were put on FIBA Plus by FIBA World. FIBA Plus is a recognition of those federations that have done well, but FIBA recognizes that they still have shortfalls in them, and because of that, they have devised a system and resource to provide to them so that they go to another level. And this FIBA Plus is divided into 1, governance. We need to improve on our governance. They have recognized that we are doing some work on it, but we need to take our governance to another level. Things that Mr. Otema has been talking about, structure issues, conflict of interest, proper structure of administration, so forth. They have also looked at the issue of 3-on-3. They have seen that Zambia is doing well on 3-on-3, but we can do better. So that is part of the FIBA Plus program. We need, without emphasis, to develop 3-on-3. The other aspect is the fundamentals. We are talking about technical capabilities and the capacity building. Refs, coaches, and athletes. There's an introduction of mini basketball, which we need to implement. So those are some of the things that on the eye, you cannot look at, you cannot see them, but overall, somewhere where they are doing real assessment, they're recognizing that Zambia is on the right path, is making strides, is progressing. Using our own measures, we may think we are not progressing, but I can report as CEO of basketball that from the time we have progressed, we are making steady progress because we have concentrated on fundamentals, and building on those fundamentals, all of us, we shall be happy one day.
Okay, thank you very much to the General Secretary of the Zambia Basketball Federation, Mr. Rodrick Ndhlovu, for coming through this evening, and of course sharing and responding to some of the questions that we had from, of course, the AGM, as was the focus of this show. And of course, Mr. Otema Musuka was always here to be able to enhance this conversation and be able to just share from his wealth of experience and knowledge with regards to basketball administration in this country. And as I always indicate, this platform is open for everybody, for us to be able to have constructive dialogue with regards to the development of basketball. And as they say, Rome was not built one day, but one of the things that we endeavor to do here is just to improve the levels of accountability when it comes to basketball administration in this country. And we remain eternally grateful to the Zambia Basketball Federation office bearers that are always available to come here and interact with the general public and be able to answer a few questions, clarify issues, and be able to just put heads together for the sake of progress. Remember, we are here to build more than tear down, but at the same time, we do this with candid conversations, and we do this with honest conversations. From me, Wenson Mavoro, thank you very much for tuning in, and everybody that participated in this conversation in the comment section. I'm not able to go through and mention each by name, but thank you for coming through and interacting with the GS and be able to ask your questions. And of course, if your questions were not answered, if you were not satisfied, look, this is why we've got this platform. You can always indicate and make it a point. We will bring him back and let him answer questions as you want. GS Otema, thank you very much, and good night to everybody that was watching and tuned in. See you next week for another exciting and interesting